Hi, everybody. Sorry about a technical start. We had a problem getting the graphics loaded. I'm Bill Whittle. This is the afternoon of July 13th, 2024, and there was an assassination attempt on the life of Donald Trump just earlier today. So what I'm going to be doing is just giving you first impressions here, and then I will take this piece of video when it's over, edit it down into something more cogent, and then post that for those people who are coming in late. Sorry about the awkward start. Okay, so let me just deal with first impressions, and the single most important point I want to make. Actually, let me make the single most important point I want to make first. At moments like this is moments that transcends politics. We stop worrying about political position, and I start worrying about the condition of the country. And the moment that we're in right now is a moment we need to be thinking about the country, not about politics. So let me just get some of the good news out of the way as what's happened. And for those of you not in the mood to acknowledge this message is specifically for you. President Biden has made some remarks after being briefed on the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. He said in his initial remarks, his very first remarks, that he was praying, that he was glad that Donald Trump was safe and not seriously injured, and that he was praying for him and his family. And then he later made a live appearance where he basically said this kind of thing is unacceptable in American politics. He unequivocally condemned the attack and said that everyone in the country must do so also, that this was not the kind of country we want to live in. And I thought he rather touchingly remarked to his political opponent, who's both have been so vehemently opposed to each other. I thought he rather touchingly remarked to him as Donald. I've tried to speak to Donald. He mentioned my first name twice. That unequivocal condemnation of this assassination attempt is exactly what I wanted to hear. Now, when he was asked by a member of our news media, which is, of course, the elite branch of thinkers that we have in our society, do you think this was an assassination attempt? The only answer that you would have to that is, well, what else could it possibly be? But he was not willing to go that far. I'm going to put that aside for the sake of not wanting to commit yourself as the president of the United States until all the facts are in. But that was not the answer I was looking for. But that does not negate the prepared statement. The prepared statement was that we have to condemn this, praying for the family, and he's trying to talk to Donald. I thought that was exactly how it should have been handled, and that's what I want to see in American politics. I want to see that. I'm not talking about the assassination now, I'm talking about the country. Anything short of a full-throated condemnation of this is suspect in my eyes. And I think that I know for an absolute certain fact, I'm not just speaking for myself, I'm speaking for Steve Green and Scott Ott and Alfonso Rachel and all the rest of us that I've got a chance to work with, that had this gone the other way, with Biden, with Obama, with Hillary Clinton, my reaction would have been the same. It is absolutely disgusting, disgraceful, and unacceptable, and I condemn it in the strongest possible terms. There's no middle ground on this. There's no shading this. You are either physically opposed, I mean physically in your gut, opposed to seeing this in the American political scene, or you come out and say that you're not, because that is the single most important thing that has to happen, is that the political opposition has to say we condemn this in no uncertain terms, and that did happen from Joe Biden and the Biden camp. And no matter what you think about him or his culpability or anything along those lines, we'll get to that in a minute. That is the single most important thing that had to happen, and that made me feel good. And when he referred to him as Donald, that made me feel good too. Again, I'm talking about the country now. We'll get into the details of what actually happened and so on. Let me tell you where I came in on the story. I came in on the 9/11 story by my friend Fritz, who called me at whatever time it was in LA at 7 a.m. or something along those lines. Said, turn on your TV. And I said, what channel? He said, it doesn't matter what channel. And I came into the story after the first tower had gone down and the second tower was still standing. And I was so... there's just such cognitive dissonance for me on September 11th that I remember thinking, I thought there were two towers in the World Trade Center, but obviously that's mistaken because skyscrapers don't just disappear. When I was advised by our friend Clay, got a text from him that there'd been this assassination attempt, and I turned on the live feed, I came in with a mob of Secret Service agents over the podium, no sign of Donald Trump, and the first thing that I heard was, "Let me get my shoes." The mic was still hot, and all the Secret Service agents were barking instructions to each other, but him saying, "Let me get my shoes," was enormously reassuring to me. And then I saw something that I'm never, ever, ever going to forget as long as I live. You cannot measure or predict physical courage. You have moral courage being out there. The ability to stand out there at a campaign rally and know that there are hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, who are giving serious thought to murdering you, requires enormous moral courage on the part of any political candidate, especially a national level political candidate. And without question, Donald Trump had that. Without question, for all of the open rallies he's done, this has just been an open possibility, and everybody's known it, and everybody's been kind of expecting it. So the moral courage that Donald Trump has shown going out in front of large crowds of people live is undeniable no matter what you think about the man. But physical courage is unknown in you until it is tested on the spot, and that applies to everybody. You may think that you're a giant strutting hero. You may crumple like a wet rag doll. Sometimes the most timid, small, humble people prove to be the most heroic. But I will tell you this. If you've been shot at and hit, I might point out, and you have a shield around you, to voluntarily push that shield aside and to stand up and make it clear that you are still visible, not only to your supporters, but to potential gunmen. He has no idea whether the shooter's down or whether there's more than one shooter or anything like that. To stand up and to essentially re-expose yourself to fire, which is his first instinct, shows phenomenal physical courage. And I will forever look at this moment, and in my mind now, going forward as a political analyst, I think that moment of him standing up and basically putting his fist in the air and shouting threats or curses or whatever, that is going to rank with the guy standing in front of the tank at Tiananmen Square. It's going to rank with Boris Yeltsin getting onto the tank during the coup in the final days of the Soviet Union. That moment was not just to show his supporters that he was okay. That moment was to show his opponents that they missed him. And not only that, I cannot possibly emphasize this strongly enough, how much physical courage that requires. I'm going to give you an example that is a ridiculous example, and it's ridiculous only because it's the closest example that I personally have. So I'm not asking anybody to, in fact, I'm specifically saying do not for a second think I'm equating these two things when I say what I'm about to say. The closest I have ever come to that sense of being under fire was during a paintball game where I was playing defense, and I was at a bunker area, at a little sandbagged area that I was defending, and it was 1 minute left in the game, and I'm defending the flag, and I got rushed by 15 or 20 people, and all I remember was now, paintballs hurt if you get hit, but this wasn't me factoring in how much it's going to hurt. When that fire came in, I put my face so far into the ground, I thought I was going to eat my way out at China at the other end. The physical imperative to get down and stay down is overwhelming. Needless to say, they flanked me and shot me in no time. But there was no question of me standing up and going, bah, 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 bah. The second that those rounds started coming in and I started hearing them thwacking against the sandbags, I got down and I stayed down and I crumpled into a little ball and I wanted to stay there. So be able to stand up and defy that attack and that attacker and the entire idea of the attack is unbelievable physical courage. And not only physical courage. It's an I don't know how else to express it other than to say it was a spontaneous expression of life force, which is the one thing that Joe Biden is missing, that life force. People have said, well, Biden's old, but Trump is old too. He's only a few years younger. It's inconceivable to me that Joe Biden would be able to get to his feet, let alone get to his feet and shake his fist at whoever it was that was shooting at him. And I'm not saying this so much to politicize the event as I am to say the fitness of this man in terms of his physical condition and his moral and physical courage is astonishing to me. Astonishing. Now, I am recording this just a few hours after it happened. My opinions on how things felt at the time are worth recording because your initial response to something emotionally is worth capturing in the moment. And that's why everybody's here right now. That's why we're all here. But it's bigger than that. When I start talking about things that I have heard and where things are factually at the moment, we're moving into an entirely different realm now. Now we're moving into the realm of speculation where it's very easy to get bitten. But I can only tell you the latest that I've heard, and I do have 2 comment sections open so that people can update me. First of all, when I was watching the event live, and they'd shown it a few times, a few things became immediately clear to me because they could not be anything else logically. So stay with me here. Let's say that you're the viewer watching me and I'm Donald Trump giving the speech. So you are where the cameras are. You're where the majority of the crowd is. I'm Donald Trump up on the podium. I'm looking to the right at some kind of graphic or some kind of a display or a sign. I'm talking about a number of things that happen with immigrants, or 20 million, I think is what it was. And all of a sudden there's a zip and a move to your right ear, and then down you go. Now that's telling me beyond any question whatsoever, there's no question at all, that the shooter is to Donald Trump's right. He's not in the crowd. He's not any distance behind the crowd. He has to be almost 90 degrees to the right of the camera because Donald Trump's right ear, you'll notice my right ear is invisible to you now. It's not possible for you to shoot me in my right ear from where you are. The shooter has to be over there. And that means that the people that were killed have to be out of frame on that side of the camera, which is why when the shots were fired, you saw everybody behind him clustering around. There was nobody injured in there. That shot came from the left of your screen, shot or shots, struck him in the ear, continued on out to the right of your screen, and then killed at least one bystander over there, critically wounded another, and we don't know the details about this yet. So in the beginning of this thing, I thought, okay, we are still in the realm where this could have been just the kind of assassination attempts we saw on Gerald Ford, let's say, or George Wallace, where there's somebody in the crowd with a pistol, somebody relatively close. When there's somebody relatively close, that means this can be any kind of a nut, right? You've got the minimum common denominator now. The situation has evolved, and I'm getting there. I'm just telling you how I've gone through the experience. When you first hear the shots, you say the lowest common denominator is that there's a crazy person not far off to his right who has smuggled in a plastic pistol or got through security in some way and is going bang, 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 bang. But what became news later in the event, and I am again speaking, I've got to caveat this, you can hear me say this caveat 15 times, I just do not want to be taken out of context. When the report was that the firing was from a rooftop, we have now entered an entirely different category of assassination attempt. We have upped the sophistication of the attacker and the attack by an order of magnitude. If it is not a person at close range with a pistol who could have been Squeaky Fromm or somebody that incompetent and that batshit crazy, frankly. If we're talking about somebody from a distance now we're talking about somebody with a much higher skill set. And I might point out, just as a matter of physics and mathematics, the further you are away from the target, the smaller your error was by missing his ear and not going directly in his head or his eye. Do you understand? The further away you are, the narrower that angle is. According to the Washington Post, it's 400 yards. Okay, so 400 yards. 400 yards is a difficult shot. 400 yards is a somebody's got a map, a professional shot. Now, when I say a professional, I don't necessarily mean a hitman, but a 400-yard shot is somebody who, Shooter, Secret Service. There was a Secret Service. I've got a map here. That's a. I'm going to see if I can drag it into the stream if I can. It's a very good map. It shows where Trump is. It's taken obviously not during the event, but we just bring this up because this is valuable news and information. So I'm going to drag this into the window at Twitch, and then I'll get it to you at YouTube. Hang on one second. I've got to rescale this. Give me a moment. This is extremely interesting. I'm going to infer a couple things here, but they seem to be reasonable inferrals. Give me 1 second to scale this. Yeah, that's close enough. Okay, hang on a second there, YouTube. I'm coming. Let's grab this again and bring this in. And scale this down a little bit so everybody can see it. This is what somebody just posted. Somebody pointed out to me in the comment section, forgive me for not having credited you. Things are moving kind of fast here. I just want to get this thing up a little higher. A little higher, please. Okay. So the red pin is the location apparently of the shooter. The blue pin is where Donald Trump was speaking, and the green pin says Secret Service. And it's on a rooftop. So I'm going to assume that that is the location of a Secret Service anti-sniper, because I heard a shot, I heard a pop, pop, and then pop, 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 pop. And I thought that was somebody maybe dumping a mag from close range. But it's possible that this was in fact, it's almost certain that this was a Secret Service sniper shooting back. And this raises all kinds of interesting questions. 400 feet, not 400 yards. Okay, that's still a football field and a third. That's a significant range shot. That's not a person that doesn't know what they're doing. 150 yards with a decent rifle is not a tough shot. Rocketman 697 says he's right. It's not a tough shot for somebody who knows how to shoot. But this is the point I'm trying to make as we speculate our way through these opening moments here. Let me take that diagram back off again. It's not a difficult shot for somebody who knows how to shoot. And this is the thing that is happening that I'm noticing in real time is the sophistication of the attack is increasing the more information we get. I think that's a fair statement to make. As I said, just to recoup, it's possible that originally it was somebody just off frame right, had to come from off frame right. It's possible it was somebody just off frame right who went pop, pop, pop with a pistol or Saturday Night Special or something. When Squeaky Fromm made the assassination attempt on Gerald Ford, there was nobody I could imagine who was less competent with a firearm than Squeaky Fromm. This kind of up close kind of thing was my first guess because it's the most likely. It's the most likely. When you get somebody firing long range with a rifle, 150 yards with a scope is not a difficult shot, as people pointed out, if you know how to use a rifle and a scope. So whoever did the shooting is now more sophisticated. The attack is more sophisticated. I have heard, just as I was going live, I cannot stress this enough, I gotta keep saying this. This is anecdotal, but I had heard that there was one shooter dead, that I'm relatively confident of, but I had heard that there was a second person present. Now, if this is true, if there was indeed a second person present, now the level of sophistication has gone up again. It's gone up again. Now we're not dealing with a one-person lunatic. We're not dealing with a one-person mass shooter like the guy in the Las Vegas shooting. If it turns out that there's more than one person involved here, now we're talking about a different story. Now, there is some confusion. I want to be clear about this. I may have misread that the second person was a second person who was a victim of the shooting. Did anybody else hear that there was a potential second shooter or potential second assassin? Or did I get that wrong? As I've said before, I would like to not get this wrong. Second person was an ordinary patriot. Was a bystander. Okay, so there is no report of a second shooter. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay. All right, so let me put that mistaken piece of misinformation to bed right away. Now, the question is, you have to ask yourself if these are just questions that arise from logic. You've got this diagram that shows that this person was shooting from a rooftop. The person was taken down virtually immediately, almost certainly by the Secret Service counter sniper. So the question then becomes, how did the person get the shot in the first place? There are two potential answers. One of them is reasonable, and the one I'm going with, and the other one is too horrific for me to seriously entertain at this point. If the guy's shooting from the rooftop, and if you've got a person patrolling for somebody from the rooftop, that's telling me that the person basically did a pop-up shot, because there's no way that the counter sniper who's scanning for exactly this, that's why the person is there, sees that person and doesn't do something about it. So I suspect what probably happened is that the person understood that they would be exposed to counter sniper fire, popped up for the shot, and just barely missed. The only other alternative is that somebody saw him there and didn't do anything about it, and I just refuse to believe that's the case, especially if, as they say, it was a local police department shooter. This is the kind of thing that I never even would have had come out of my mouth a few years ago. This is how far my confidence in the federal government has fallen to even have that thought enter my head. But it did. There's a pretty good video of the counter sniper shooting back. He acquired the target before the guy shot, but seemed they hadn't been able to tell if the guy was a threat or not. Well, let me say this about conspiracies, okay? Because we are now live in the moment. We're a few hours out of this. 10,000 conspiracy theories are being hatched already, and more will come. Some of them may prove to be true. But let's just remember one thing about reality, and that is that reality is messy. And that if it turns out that this guy didn't take a shot until he was sure, the most likely explanation is not that this was a multiple conspiracy on the part of the police department, the Secret Service, and all the rest. The most likely explanation is that the human being who was tasked with killing somebody, not the shooter, the anti-shooter sniper, is that person wanted to make damn sure that he was dealing with a person with a rifle and waited too long. But clearly, on some level, I mean, this seems to be as logical a conclusion as it could possibly be. I'll get to that in 1 second, Castellan. Clearly, I think we can say with some certainty, if the assassin was indeed on a rooftop shooting from 150 feet away, and there was a anti-sniper on the roof to prevent this eventuality, then security has failed at some point. Yes, that doesn't strike me as a particularly controversial statement. Now, as I was driving here, I thought I had seen, just as I was driving here, a tweet or an X by Elon Musk saying he fully supports Donald Trump for presidency, and he had given a significant campaign contribution to Donald Trump earlier. I have long thought that the two most exposed targets in the world, in other words, and I've got a lot of super chats, I'll get to all of them in a minute, that the two people who were most likely assassination targets were Donald Trump and Elon Musk. This was my thought from the beginning. And my first thought as I came to work today is, going forward, I think I would take Elon Musk's security over government security. That's how suspicious I am now of the deep state that I didn't believe even existed prior to 2020. And you may say that is conspiratorial thinking and so on, but I don't think there's much discussion about the idea that the security for Donald Trump at this event failed, and that if you are shooting at that range and you hit somebody's ear, your deflection from a headshot is milliradians. So the question now is, I would have a long talk with whoever is providing Elon Musk's security, because he is the richest man in the world by a wide margin. he is smashing a lot of tea carts in his just in everything he does, in the space industry, in his electric car industry, and so on. There's a lot of people who would like to see Elon Musk go away. And I have long worried about him, and have long consoled myself by saying, I imagine if you're the richest man in the world, your security is probably rather good. And so I think whether it's in addition to Secret Service protection or in place of or whatever, I would have a very, very serious conversation about private security after today. Because if there was no counter sniper, then that is a terrible failure of security. And the fact that the guy got the shot off is another indication that something failed catastrophically today. The next thought I had was, well, this, again, as I was driving over, I said, clearly this should be the end of the outdoor rallies for President Trump, at least until after the election. And then I realized I said to myself, no, I think this is the time to have another open air rally immediately. If I have a read on Donald Trump's character after having watched him for all these years, I suspect that is what he would want to do. That's what I would do. And the reason I would do it would not be because I thought it would look good politically. The reason I would do it was because if somebody just shot at me and missed my brain by a half an inch and shot the top of my ear off because I'm doing an outdoor rally, I believe the reason I'd do another outdoor rally right away with improved security, I might add as a small caveat, is because I don't want to be terrified about it. He has the moral courage to go out there and become an assassination target every day of his life. And somebody has shot at him and just barely missed, enough to draw blood, needless to say, and not draw blood like a shoulder wound, draw blood, a half an inch? Would have put it in his eye? If that were me, I would do another open air rally as soon as I possibly could. I would not retreat from the threat. And I don't believe he will, because the reason I chose the title for this stream is Indomitable, is because that is the kind of spirit that this guy has. He's indomitable. People are saying in the comments section that he plans to be at a UFC event tonight. I cannot imagine a better thing for him to be doing right now. I cannot imagine a better thing for him to do right now than to go to a UFC event like it never happened. This is Churchillian leadership. We got a lot of people watching. We have 1,000 viewers on YouTube, and that's quite a big number for this stream. So whether you support Donald Trump or not, and most of you watching do, obviously, but whether you support him or not, I was willing to be gracious enough to say that Biden came out, called him Donald, and utterly condemned this attack, and I thought that was a good thing to say. And I think that if you are opposed to Donald Trump, you cannot do anything other than, at the very least, admire the courage of the man and the resilience of him. So I can't wait to see him if he goes to a UFC event. And here's what's going to be the thing to watch. He's not going to go to that event tonight. Okay. That probably makes sense because they want to make sure that this isn't a sequence of events with fallback snipers or so on. I don't know. I don't really care. I saw what I saw. I saw him get up. And by the way, when I mentioned that he stood up on the podium and put his fist in the air, if you watch carefully, the Secret Service has got a complete body shield around him. And when they get him to the presidential limo, the Beast, their directive is to push down and in. That's what they did with Reagan. Down and in. Get this person out of the line of any line of fire. And if you watch Donald Trump as he's being escorted to the edge of the limousine, Secret Service agents are pushing him down and in, and he pushes back against them, gets up on the floorboard. His head comes a full head above his protection, and basically does a fist pump to show that he's okay and that he's not backing down from this. So that is indomitable. That is the indomitable spirit. This is this is what I want an American president to do when he's shot. I want, and saw the same thing from Ronald Reagan. I want Ronald Reagan to be there surrounded by surgeons after he's been shot into the chest and damn near killed. I want an American president to have the moxie and the grit, just the fundamental courage to look up at the surgeons that are about to save his life or not and say, I hope you're all Republicans. That's what I want to see in a president. I want to see a president who's not intimidated by this. And he is a tough old bird, this Trump. He's just a tough bird. And he's got something that's more important than his physical stamina, too. Let me backtrack for a second. In 3 days after the election in 2012, when Romney lost to Obama, I said the next president of the United States he's going to be a Republican, he's going to come from the pop culture. And I said that because watching what they've done to McCain and Romney and all the rest of it, I'm not a McCain or a Romney fan, but watching how they've been demonized, I realized that the next president has to be able to handle the press. Thank you, John Eden. Thank you very much. He has to be. And I made that prediction 4 years before he became president. I had no idea it was going to be Donald Trump. I just knew it was going to be somebody from the pop culture because they had to be able to handle the press. And what Trump did tonight was to project strength. People are saying the ear wound was apparently glass shrapnel from a shattered teleprompter from the first bullet hit. I've heard that as a theory. I've also heard Trump say that it was a bullet hit. I'm not going to speculate on that. I don't know, and it doesn't matter in the slightest. Doesn't matter in the slightest. Somebody shot a rifle at him, and there you go. So the reason I bring up what I just said is not just to brag about myself. The reason I'm saying that is because Donald Trump understands the power of the image. When Trump got COVID, he was saying that this was not as serious as people were making it out to be. He wasn't saying it wasn't serious. He was saying that all of these lockdowns and the masks and all this other stuff is just hysteria. So next thing Donald Trump has COVID, and all the people who were mocking him for saying that's essentially, is if you're in decent shape, you will survive COVID. That's statistically the case. I mean, you look at the fatality numbers and the percentages. We knew these things by the end of April of 2020. But that didn't make any difference. But back to what happened. He developed COVID. He was down for 2 or 3 days. He comes back to the White House. He jogs up the steps and appears at the balcony on the White House, waves, and then goes inside. Now, I have heard anecdotally that after he waved and turned away, he damn near collapsed because he was so out of breath. But that's not the point. The point is that this man knew that he had said that this was a serious health threat, but not the Black Death that it was being made out to be. And he needed to project the strength necessary to show that, yes, I just got COVID and I'm however the hell old he was, and he's overweight and got another couple of other contributing factors as well. But I'm okay. And to have the instinct to do that with COVID, and then the instinct to do it today is my prediction fulfilling itself only to the degree that I knew that the person who was going to challenge this political machine was going to be somebody who had to, in his bones, not learn it because you can't learn it, somebody who had to, in their bones, understand the power of the image, the power of the image. This image is never going to go away. This image is going to be in the history books for as long as there are history books. Let me get it back for you. No, sorry, that was Frank Luke. That's not it. Nope, come on, Bill. That one. You can't compose a shot like that. You just can't compose a shot like that. As I said, this is George Bush at 9/11 with the megaphone. This is Boris Yeltsin on the tank. The American flag in the background, upside down, almost free falling, almost like it's being blown away in the wind. And this indomitable man standing there, refusing to go down and refusing to cower. Sorry. Nice to have engineers. So, what does this mean politically? Well, I'm going to go to the truism that I have heard, and we don't know who's behind this. We don't know if anybody is behind it other than the person that did the shooting, but I have a couple things to say about that. And let me say the most important one before I forget it. There is going to be an enormous temptation on the part of conservatives to say that this shooting happened not influenced by, but because of the inflammatory comments made about Donald Trump and how he's a Hitler and he's a Nazi and let's put a bullseye on him and all of that. This is not a road we want to go down for reasons I'm about to explain, okay? There is no question whatsoever that whether this person is an individual or whoever it turns out to be, that their hatred of Donald Trump is created in them by the perception of Donald Trump that the news media and others and the Democratic Party have put out about him. He's a Hitler. He's a threat to democracy. He's the end of democracy. All of that's true. I'm not taking away any of that. I'm not saying any of that is not dangerous and potentially fatal. But what absolutely needs to be clear in everybody's mind right now is this. If we believe that what somebody else says is capable of making another person commit murder and have it be the other person's fault, then there is no free speech left in this country, and we will all have to reduce our speech to the level where anything that we say cannot possibly be used by the craziest person in our society. There is no way out of this argument. I've given this a great deal of thought prior to this. There's no question about the influence. There's no question about culpability on the part of the press, but what the press said and did not make this person shoot, because if we go down that road, there is no such thing as free will anymore, and there's no such thing as free speech anymore. It is absolutely, absolutely critical that we do not fall into this trap, because then we're going to start saying, oh, well, you see, they said it was because it put a bullseye on him, it was Biden's fault. No, it wasn't Biden's fault that this guy's pulled the trigger. This guy pulled the trigger. And if we lose the individual responsibility of this action, then we are falling into a trap that has been set for us by decades of this kind of thinking, where, oh, well, that's dangerous speech, or what he said made me do it. No, nothing anybody ever says can make you do anything. And I cannot stress this strongly enough. This is my greatest concern for our team in the days after this. I am absolutely convinced about this. I've given this enormous thought prior to this. I've given this enormous deep thought on both sides of the issues for what it's worth. If somebody says, I'm going to go kill that guy, or I want somebody to go kill that guy, that is that is means and justification for an investigation by law enforcement. That is a reasonable response to that. But speech is not causative. And there is responsibility here, and there is culpability here, and there is influence here. We can have it both ways if we understand where that dividing line is. We can say things like, well, we got to put a bullseye on Trump. That to me is not somebody needs to take this guy out. That was the same thing they said about Tulsi Gabbard. Not Tulsi Gabbard. Was it Tulsi Gabbard? Anyway, we have to maintain our core principles in moments like this. And our core principles are two of our core principles are freedom of speech. Three. Sometimes you got to do something. Among our core principles are, Gabby Giffords, thank you. Sorry. Among our core principles are freedom of speech and individual responsibility. And if we say that one caused the other, we've abandoned both of those principles. And I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not saying that the media made this guy do it. I'm saying the media created an environment that caused this individual to take these actions. But that's not the same thing. Those two things are not identical. So I just think that needs to be said. Now, what does this mean moving forward? Because I'd love to do some questions, but I don't want to make this thing run all night, because the more talking I do, the less valuable it gets. My thought immediately after I realized he was safe was, if they had succeeded, then Donald Trump could have appointed Krusty the Clown as his successor, and I'm voting for that guy in a landslide. I don't care who he designates. We're going to find out in the next couple of days who his vice president. I suspect strongly going to find out in the next couple of days. We're going to find out who his vice presidential nominee is going to be. But if anything happens to Donald Trump, I think all of the outrage and genuine deep-seated hatred of what's being done to this country and the love for Donald Trump for fighting it is going to be immediately transferred onto that person. I think this assassination attempt seals the deal in November, because even if it had been successful, and maybe even more so had it been successful, what more can you do to a man whose entire premise is the state operates on a level where it is lawless? There is no accountability in the media. There's no accountability in the Justice Department. There's no accountability from the FBI. None of it. What else do you have to do? You raid his house in the middle of the night and stack all this evidence? Okay, you want to do that? Great. You want to sentence him to jail? You want to do that? Great. You want to convict him of felonies that are trumped up charges, if you'll pardon the expression, that everybody knows that? Then, okay, great. Now that where do you go from this? Well, I guess the only thing left to do is kill him. And that's what they tried to do today. Somebody tried to do that today. So, as John Pershing said, congratulations, crazy, you just elected Trump as President 47. I think there's no question about it. Now, what do I think is the most likely case? I think the most likely case for the I didn't say the only case, I said the most likely case. The most likely identity and motive will be, I said, let me say this again, the most likely motive will be a crazed individual who's convinced that all of the rhetoric he's heard is true and that he's acting in his own mind in order to, he thinks he's just taking a shot at Hitler. I'm not saying that's the conclusion that we'll reach. I'm just saying that's the most likely conclusion. And I'll give you something to give you some hope. I wish I wasn't able to say this. I wish I could go back to the world that I believed in prior to 2020 or so. Tim Morris quoted something that was going to make my second point, and that is, if you're going to take a shot at the king, you better not miss. We will get to the bottom of who this person is. And the reason I can say that with confidence is because of what I've seen in terms of internet sleuthing. I'm going to take a little side tour here for a minute to tell you just this astonishing story, and you can see it in great detail. I've mentioned it before on some of my live shows, but it needs to be mentioned again in terms of, will we ever get to the bottom of this? Internet Historian is a great YouTube channel, and he's got a series, but basically the short form is, he has looked at the kind of investigations that people like 4chan have done, and things, he will not divide us, things that you would think are impossible of solving are solvable when you put enough bright people to work on it, and so on. The example that blew my mind was Shia LaBeouf, when Trump was elected for his first term. Shia LaBeouf had a flag that he put up called "He Will Not Divide Us," and he ran a live webcam for it. And it was his way of stating his protest against Donald Trump, which he's entitled to do. Well, it turned out that this live cam in New York started drawing a lot of Trump supporters, so Shia LaBeouf moved it to the top of a building, and then people found it and put a drone on it, and they were trying to blow it up and bring it down and do all kinds of other things. So Shia LaBeouf moved it again. And Shia LaBeouf moved the flag to an open field in, I want to say in Tennessee, far removed from any city. And it was just a flag against the sky, and they were live streaming the flag. And Shia LaBeouf was convinced that there's no way that anybody's going to find a flag out in the middle of nowhere. And it turned out that they found the location of that flag within 48 hours, and it may have been less than that. What they did was, this was a live stream. So once the sun went down, the guys at 4chan, who they describe as weaponized autistics, that's how they describe themselves. Thank you very much, Melbourne, Australia. As a super chat saying, so glad he's okay. Best wishes from Melbourne, Australia. And Aussies have always been there for us, and we've always been there for the Aussies. And that's why we're a special relationship between these two countries, more special than U.S. and England, in my opinion. So immediately they realized it's got to be in the Eastern time zone because it's a live stream that's going down. To make a very long story short, what happened was they saw contrails, 2 jet contrails in the sky. Now, people like you and I would say there's no way to determine what that is, but these people have nothing else to do with their lives, and they're very, very brilliant. And so they started looking at diverging jet contrails in the Eastern time zone on that time of day and so on. And they were able to put down a number of possibilities, and they said, if this is where we think it is, we should see another jet, because here comes a jet. We're looking at it live and radar tracking it on a live app. If it's where we think it is, we should see a jet contrail appear at 5:22 p.m. or whatever the hell the time was. And sure enough, there it is. So then they know they've got a circle of uncertainty that's actually pretty small. And then basically what they did was, as they got closer and closer, they had a guy driving around in a car beeping his horn, and they're listening to the live stream, and they were basically going Marco Polo with the guy. Closer, 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 no further, no, closer, closer, closer. And they just dialed it right in. And the next thing you know, there's the flag flying on the flagpole, and Shia LaBeouf is defeated again. I sat there and watched. It's there on. It really is genuinely some of the best content on the internet. Internet historian, he will not divide us, episodes 3 or 4, whatever. Shia LaBeouf parenthetically decided that once he'd been found outdoors, he was going to say, well, then I'll do something he can't possibly do. He took the flag, put it indoors, and streamed it from there, and they were able to determine that it was at a piece of property that he rented in I want to say in Scandinavia or something. So finally he just gave up. So they did the same thing to find that guy who attacked a conservative with a bike lock, the guy with the ski mask. Once you put the internet onto something, we will find out. And this started with the George W. Bush allegations of being AWOL, when they came out and said the IBM Selectrics at an Army base wouldn't have done the little tiny TH. They would have written a TH in normal. So this is a fake document. Sure enough, it was. So there you go. Okay. So this business about if you're going to go after the king, you better make sure you get him. I think I'll probably just leave you with this today, gang, for those of you who are watching. This could have been one of the worst things that's happened to the country. I think as we get some distance on it, we're going to look back on today as one of the best things that ever happened for the country. Specifically because if you're going to go after the king, you better kill him. And they didn't. They didn't kill him. It doesn't matter whether it turns out it was one lone lunatic. It doesn't matter. What won the election today was Donald Trump getting up from his protection and shaking his fist in the air. That's what won the election. That's what became iconic. When he stood up there, that image of him with blood on his ear, anybody with an eyeball can see how close that came to killing this man. When that man gets up from his body shield and basically says, no, that's when the election is over. It doesn't matter who runs against him anymore. It doesn't matter who they pick. Nobody's going to beat this person because Donald Trump exhibited moral courage, physical courage, grit, and indomitability. And that's what most Americans want. They want leaderships. Donald Trump was tested by blood today. Donald Trump came within a half an inch of having his brains blown out all over the back of the stage. And his reaction was not to cower and run away. His reaction was to get up and fight back against the forces that are trying their very best to make this country into a nation of slaves. And he's not going to back down. I'm not going to back down. You're not going to back down. It is over as of today. Over. It doesn't matter how deep this assassination attempt goes. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. And that man showed today what he's made out of. And should, I almost said the unthinkable, but there's nothing unthinkable about it today. And should somebody succeed in killing this brave man who loves this country, because I can't see any reason for him doing it, can you? You see any other reason why Donald Trump is doing this other than love of country? If you look at every single president that's come into office, you look at their net worth before they come into office versus after office. Ronald Reagan went from 2 to 3 million net worth to 5 million. The Clintons went from a couple $100,000 to 150 million. Joe Biden's worth 130 million. Nancy Pelosi is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Donald Trump is the only president in the history of this country who's taken a pay cut in order to be president. I cannot think of a single reason why Donald Trump would be doing what he's doing and exposing his one and only life to this, other than love of country and love of the common people. I cannot conceive of another reason. He's not in it for the money. He doesn't need the money. He's not in it for the influence. He's not in it for the private jets. He's got a private jet. He's not in it for the luxury hotels. He has luxury hotels. He's not in it for the ability to do a junket to Fiji. If Donald Trump wants to go to junket to Fiji, he gets on a plane and goes to Fiji. There's no other reason for him to be doing this other than love of his country. And that's all I want. I don't care about anything. Let me rephrase that. I do care. I do care about the other things. I care that he's brassy and loud. I care that he's a braggart about his achievements. I care that it bothers me that he's not more urbane or professional. It especially bothers me that nobody will take his phone away so that his Twitter account is not expressing exactly what he feels at this moment. When he says things like, John McCain was a loser because he got shot down, that bothers me. All of this stuff bothers me, but none of it matters to me. It doesn't matter anymore. The thing about crises is crises strip away the dead wood. They strip away all of the things that don't matter. And what we found today was the brass tacks. And the brass tacks are, this man knew his life was in danger, got shot at and got hit by what appears to be a relatively high-level professional. His security service, which he might have had confidence in prior to this, is now gone. The one conclusion we can draw from this today, folks, is that the Secret Service protection for Donald Trump failed. There's no question about that. It's not like they deflected the bullet at the last second. They failed. And now the question is, where does he go going forward? But I think if he's smart and if he's brave, and I think he's both of those things, he's not going to say no more outdoor rallies. He's going to do the precise opposite. And whoever decided to do the shooting today, sir or madam or unidentified, your timing could not have been better. The Republican National Convention starts tomorrow. I cannot think ever in the history of the world, in the history of this country, certainly in the history of this country, can I think of a more astonishingly, let me rephrase this. What do you think the entrance of Donald Trump at the RNC is going to look like now? The show's made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com. If you're one of these people watching and you watch frequently, I'd love to have you be a member at BillWhittle.com. You can sign up there and get members-only shows that are just for you. But otherwise, the main reason you're there is the reason that our other members are there, and that is to keep content coming that is independent of any kind of criticism or any kind of suggestion of control. I say what I want to say, and all I do is take pictures. I'm not a painter. I'm not creating any of this. I'm just telling you what I see in this country that I love and that we all love so much. For all of the super chats that came in today, they were all comments. None of them were questions. If you don't mind, I'm not going to read them. But I am extremely grateful for all of them. And for goodness sakes, please ask me again for free on Thursday, and I'll be happy to do that. So for Steve Green, Scott Ott, Alfonso Rachel, who we would like to bring back sometime soon, and everybody who's been watching patiently, let me just leave you with a final thought. Remember the country. Remember the country. Do not be governed by hate, and do not let your reason escape you. Reason and emotional control and the ability to be angry without becoming insane are the hallmarks of the philosophy that I believe in and that I call conservatism. And to lose any of those is to lose the fight, is to simply have them succeed at driving you crazy. That's not going to happen to me. And my fond hope is that working together, we can make sure that doesn't happen to any of you out there either. Thanks very much for joining us. I will post this unedited directly, and we have talked about bringing our right angle shoot time from Tuesday to Monday morning, but certainly this is what we'll be talking about. Our prayers go out to the family of the person who was killed and to the other person who was seriously wounded. And remember, folks, remember, the temptation to make this into something more than it is will be overwhelming. It might be true that there's more to it than we see, but it's not proven yet, and wait until the proof comes in. Do not let yourself go down that path of darkness, and because it does not come out anywhere good. We will see you Monday night for the Stratosphere Studio. And again, thank you for our members for support here at BillWhittle.com.